Hi, this is Angela. I'm in Lancaster County, Lancaster, South Carolina, and this unassuming spot is the birth marker of our seventh president, Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was born around this spot, March 15th, 1767. It was a real strange birth. It was a sad birth. His father had been killed. He was clearing land. His family had come to Union County, North Carolina, from Scotland, and they were Presbyterian, and there's a real large Presbyterian community in this area. And his father was clearing land and had a logging accident, and the log kicked back and killed him instantly. That was at the middle of February, and so it took the mom a week to get to the church where her husband was going to be buried and where the service was going to be. She was just in a wagon with a mule pulling it, and she had 2 young children and was pregnant with Andrew Jackson. So she buried her husband at the Waxhaws Presbyterian Church, which is about 5 miles, maybe 10 miles from this spot. And after that, she started on her way back home to Mineral Springs, North Carolina, in Union County. And she was alone with her 2 young sons, and she stopped at one of her brother's houses and spent one night. Then she was attempting to get to her house, so it was going to take her, quite a few days to get there. And so she ended up going into labor at the second brother's cabin and was delivered of her son, Andrew. And so she ended up having to sell the farm that she and her husband put together in Union County, North Carolina. It was a kiss of death for a single woman in that era. In the colonial days, a woman could not survive without a man, and her commitment had been to her husband, Andrew Jackson Sr., and she never cared to marry again. So she moved in and lived with 2 different brothers that lived 5 miles from each other, near where I'm standing right now. So the American Revolution broke out, and Andrew, at 13, became one of the youngest couriers in the American Revolution. And he and his brother were hiding. They were British in the area, and they were hiding in their uncle's cabin up in the loft, and they were captured by some British soldiers. And Andrew was already a real feisty man at 13. He refused to polish a British general's boots, just absolutely refused to. He said he would not do it, and he spit. And he bore a scar the remainder of his life on his hand where he tried to block a sword coming at him, and he had a big scar on his forehead where he was actually hit with the general's sword. His brother tried to take up for him, and he was hit also. So they ended up in a prisoner of war camp. He was our only president ever that was in a prisoner of war camp. He's also our only president that ever killed anyone in a duel. He was a famous dueler. He dueled over any and everything. He was very vicarious, loud, drinking man, a man of the people. But back to his childhood. So at 13, he's a prisoner of war, and his mother gets up enough money to purchase he and his brother's freedom. She had heard that they were both critically ill, and they both had cholera. So she came and got them and had a 40-mile walk after she had talked the guard into letting both boys go with the bribe and pleading her case about her 2 young sons. She had 1 horse, and Andrew was not as sick as his brother, Robert. So Robert got the horse, and Andrew had to walk the 40 miles, which took them a week. They finally got here near this spot at the cabin of her brother, and not long after they got there, her son Robert died. And her oldest child had already died in the very first battle of the American Revolution, so this poor mother had lost 2 of her children. Well, she believed so much in our new country that as soon as Andrew was well enough, she volunteered to go work at the cholera outbreak that was in Charleston, South Carolina. She thought that maybe she had an immunity to it because she had been with both of her sons and nursed them back to health without contracting it. Well, that being said, she died while she was trying to help soldiers that were critically ill with cholera. So at age 14, Andrew Jackson was an orphan. And from that moment on, he was on his own. And it wasn't long before the War of 1812 came to be, and he was the biggest name in the political and military ranks. Everyone knew Andy Jackson. He was like the star, the head dude at the Battle of New Orleans. And if it wasn't for him, we would have lost the Battle of 1812. He won it single-handedly. He won the respect of all of his men. He became the most adored military figure in the United States. He was our very first military, I guess you would say, hero since the days of George Washington. But Andrew Jackson was a true man of the people. He was fairly illiterate. He learned to read at the Waxhaw Presbyterian Church near here. He never had any real schooling. He practiced his reading on the people at the church every Sunday. He would sit in the pews and read the week-old newspaper aloud to people. So at about 17 or 18, maybe a little bit older, I would have to go back and look, he decided that he had come to as far as he could ever go in the Land of the Waxhaws. This spot where I'm standing was called the Land of the Waxhaws because of the Waxhaw Indian tribe that lived here. There were 2,000 Waxhaw Indians that lived in lodges along a Cane Creek River that's very near here. Andrew Jackson's entire life, he never knew where he was born. He had no idea. The North Carolina, South Carolina lines had not been drawn yet during the time of his birth. So at the time, this was North Carolina where I'm standing. And the North Carolina, South Carolina line here looks like a river tributary. It goes in and out. When you come from Charlotte, North Carolina to this spot, you go in and out of South Carolina and North Carolina 5 times. So if I were to walk about half of a mile down this hill and up another hill, I would come out to my house. It's on a creek near here. Everyone back then lived on creeks. So it's a very desolate area. Even 200 years later, this is still a very desolate area. But another day, I will take you and show you the Andrew Jackson Birthplace Monument in North Carolina. Yes, North Carolina. North and South Carolina both claim Andrew Jackson because on his deathbed, he addressed the issue of his birth and said, I don't know where I was born. I don't know if it was North Carolina or South Carolina. I just know I almost got born in a wagon. So this is the North Carolina, very, very plain Jane marker for our president, Andrew Jackson. And one little tidbit of trivia, in addition to being a heavy dueler, he claimed to have only been in 13 duels, but supposedly he was in as many as 30. And in one duel, he knew that he was evenly matched as a shooter with his opponent, Crawford. And so he suggested that Crawford take the first shot, which Crawford did. He hit Jackson right above the heart. It hit a rib bone and went into him, but did not kill him. He patted himself with a handkerchief, raised his gun, and shot and killed his opponent. So that's, very proof that he did kill someone in a duel. But there were rumors he had killed other men as well. But the most interesting fact about Andy Jackson to me is that he did not believe in paper money at all. He was a proponent of gold and silver only. And I think he would find it very ironic that he is on the $20 bill. There's going to be changes on the $20 bill. They're getting ready to put Harriet Tubman on. I think it's very appropriate, being as in his lifetime, Andrew Jackson did own slaves. When he bought the Hermitage in Nashville, Tennessee, originally it only had 15 slaves. And when he finished expanding it, adding on, putting in more gardens, dairy, everything else that a plantation needed. He had 300 slaves. So he's a very controversial president. He also has been titled as the only president we ever had that was in serious need of psychotropic drugs. He was a very irrational, fiery man, had a quick temper, and very rarely ever backed down from a fight. It didn't happen. But anyway, this was just a little quick tour of a very unassuming place. But he was an unassuming man, and he was pretty much illiterate. Other presidents made fun of him, other politicians, because his grammar was atrocious. But he could write a very good, very rousing speech or letter. He could get his emotion through the paper, even though he had terrible grammatical errors and misspellings. It's been said that he could write one letter and have misspelled the same word 10 different ways. But that's just a little something about Andrew Jackson, born on this spot, March 15th, 1767, in the Land of the Waxhaws of the Carolinas. I hope you have a really good day, and I'll talk to everyone later. Bye.